Hello there. If you don't know, my name's Eric Rainwater, and I've started recording videos and trying to post them every week simply because I have thoughts, I have opinions. I mean, we all have opinions, but I have thoughts that I feel are encouraging. They encourage the ways I encourage myself, things I think about that are encouraging to me, the way I build myself up. And maybe they'll help somebody, even if, only a couple people watch it. It might help them. And if this is just something I do for my own catharsis, good. If it's something maybe my kids watch down the road, that's fine too. But if it helps people, even a small number, great. If it helps a lot of people and it becomes a nice little side gig, fantastic. But at this stage, I'm not really too concerned about the financial side of it. I just want to, if nothing else, verbally process with whoever out there that wants to listen on YouTube or whatever else I end up posting these videos on. Now also see I got a new mic, nice, can't see it, nice little cheap lavalier mic, but hopefully there's a little bit of a breeze, and so hopefully it won't get any wind noise from it, and hopefully it's nice and clear. We'll see how it does. I'm smoking out of my little old classic straight billiard. This was an estate pipe that I picked up on my anniversary last year. It's got one of those, what do you want to call it? Where it's got the metal in there. Vaporator or something like that. And it's supposed to cut down on the moisture. It's supposed to help the heat dissipate, but I never really noticed that it worked. But, I don't want to try to yank it out of there either. I've never been able to truly identify where it's made. It just says Wall Street Dry Smoker, and it says French Briar made in France. So I don't know how old it is. I got it at an antique store and cleaned it up. Wasn't too bad. It was my first kind of estate little project of trying to clean up a pipe, and decently happy with it. I've learned that a lot of times I like curved pipes because I can clench them better while I read or go lunting, as it says. Maybe I'll do a lunting video sometime. But yeah, we'll just see how it does. The straight pipe lends itself to holding it in your hand. So it's nice if I'm not having to use my hands for anything here, or if you're not reading a book or trying to do something with your hands. I'm smoking kind of a navy cut Virginia Perique, or vapor, I think some people call it. I can see why some guys, that's kind of their go-to type of blend. It might end up being mine as well. I'll take my watch off. It's kind of bugging me. But today I want to talk about something I see missing kind of in our culture, especially the way we raise our kids. I think it gets at the heart of some of the problems I see going on in the culture. A little fuzz there. And that's this little thing that I like to call resiliency. It could also be called mental fortitude, or even courage, perseverance, those type of things. So yeah, I want to get into that because it's something I value, and I think it's much needed as the days ahead come upon us. But I can also see why we've maybe lost it a little bit in our culture. So let's get into it. But yeah, if you like these videos, hit like, hit subscribe, share, all those things. Yeah, I'd love for people to, if it encouraged you, and send it to someone else, it might encourage them. I know that a good YouTube video, sometimes somebody else can say something a way we're trying to communicate that maybe we can't. Maybe they express it in a way that makes it make more sense, or sometimes you have a friend that needs help, but they're not totally listening to you. You're a little bit too familiar, but they might listen to someone they don't know. It just works that way sometimes. There are times my dad tried to, sometimes I talk about my dad in the past tense because I talk about when he was raising me. My dad's very much alive, and I still have good conversations with my dad. But I talk about him sometimes in the past tense. But it's things that he said to me in the past. So, resiliency, perseverance, mental fortitude, inner courage. It's something that's drastically missing, I think, from our culture. Drastically missing, especially in this Generation Z, Y, whatever, Zoomer. I don't care I don't know what they're calling it, but something missing. I mean, it's even in the Gen Xers. I mean, I just see it, and you see all these people. You see all these people acting a fool. And the big thing you see, many times you might see it on the internet, but you might have experienced it. You see a grown person acting like a toddler. I have a toddler, and that's excusable. She's a toddler. She's learning. But when a grown person has a temper tantrum in public, doesn't control themselves, just wildly emotes, and they can't handle, that people might disagree with them, or they didn't get something their way. Grow up. Life's tough, man. Not everybody's gonna agree with you. There's no possible way that everybody can agree on every little thing all the time. But the dangerous part is that there are people who will try to make us all conform to something like that. Now that's a different conversation. But how do we control ourselves? how do we get resiliency? And if you aren't resilient, you can learn to be resilient. If you recognize you need it, then and that you need it in your kids, then good. And maybe you'll watch this and realize maybe I'm not very resilient. Maybe I'm not mentally and physically tough. And that doesn't mean you need to be a superstar, you need to have it all figured out, but we can all use a little bit more resiliency, more mental toughness. We can all whine a little less, complain a little less. Now, obviously, there's things to complain about, there's things wrong with the world, but we can be tougher in our own hearts. And one way I see this in the way we raise our kids. We raise our kids, we try to protect them, and that's good to a point, but I think we need to have more of a preparation mindset. They're going to be grown-ups. They're going to get out of the house someday, and they need to be prepared for life. They need to be prepared that not everybody's going to agree with them. Now, especially as Christians, as the culture becomes more and more antichrist, basically, and more against us, no matter what flavor of Christian you are, if you claim Christ at some point, they're going to hate you. And we need to be tough. Especially when there's times when there's no place for us to really fight back. Where there's all kinds of days, there's all kinds of situations where you got to take it on the chin. And we don't have tough chins. We got chins of glass, man. We are not tough. Now, part of that comes from we've had it too easy. And thank God that not everything's so ridiculously hard that, we're beat down. But, I look in the Bible too, and I feel like there's two basic kind of tests. And I look at two different lives, the lives of David and the lives of Solomon. Both were tested. But whose test was in one way harder, and whose test, and who failed their test. Now, David's test was grueling. He had the king of the land, and he had the standing army of the land, 3,000 chosen soldiers, hunting him down. Which means there was all kinds of other people that didn't want to come under the ire of Saul. Even if they liked David, they would be tempted to turn on David. David was in hiding for, I think it was maybe 20 years. That's a long time to be on the run, man. But he passed his test. Now, he had his own screw-ups. Now, notice, when David screwed up was when he wasn't being tested that way. Now, Solomon, his life was easy. David brought about peace in the land, or God brought about peace through David. And Solomon was given a kingdom that was peaceful on every side. Solomon may have been the most powerful man in the earth in his day. There may not have been another ruler that was more powerful than Solomon. Now, I don't think his empire was as big as some of the other empires that would come after. But his influence was known around the world, and he was he's the wisest man that ever was. It's fine, it's great. But the wisest man that ever was, and maybe ever will be, as far as earthly knowledge especially, he failed his test. his life was easy, and the test he faced was temptation. And in the West, I feel like that's been our test. And the way things are going is because we have failed the test. And but we have an opportunity. As the pressure increases, we have an opportunity to become resilient. Now, there's a Greek word in the Bible. Sometimes it's translated as perseverance in some of the epistles, but it's the word hupomone, and it means joyful endurance. And I think that's the real key. Now, obviously, there's days you got to set your face like flint, grit your teeth, and just kind of get through it. And it's tough. But the goal is to learn to have hupomone, to have joyful endurance. You know, to get thick skin and just let things roll off your back like water off a duck's back, the saying goes. That's the sign of maturity, I think. When you and it's a sign of humility. You can't have true perseverance without humility. They go hand in hand. But man, we need it. I know I need it. I mean, the world's getting crazy. And, according to the voices, the public voices at least out there, as a white male, it's all my fault. All their troubles are my fault. All their whining is my fault. I didn't do it, man. Oh, that's another conversation. I love people. I love people of every race, every culture, but there are definitely cultures and ways of living that I think have gotten attached to certain people that are destructive. And that has nothing to do with the color of the skin. It has everything to do with the songs they sing and the words and the stories they tell each other and the things they collectively continue to believe. And if we're not mentally tough, if we don't have fortitude, we won't know our identity, and we'll either begin to believe what the culture says about us, or we'll react to it in an unhealthy way. And we'll just perpetuate what people think, false notions they think. We'll perpetuate it. We'll play right into the devil's hand because the devil's trying to divide us. But on a personal level, at least, the way out is become resilient, gain perseverance, gain patience in yourself, because that they can't take away. We might get to a point where they take away our finances, our material goods, even things we need, all kinds of stuff. It might be very well in our day. It's entirely possible they'll try to kill us and put us in prison because we don't agree with. And if you don't have perseverance, if you don't know how to cling to your true identity and cling to Christ, cling to the rock, you won't pass the test. And we've had tests recently, and I think we've all failed a little bit, or it's all waking us all up, hopefully. But I'm convinced more than ever that we need it. We need joyful endurance. We need to have a joyful confidence in Christ, and through Christ in our own identity, in His strength and not our own. I think that's the only way through. Patton, there's a quote from Patton. I don't know, I won't get it right, but I'll paraphrase it because I like it. And he says something to the fact that the mind must run the body. The body, the flesh, you could say, It's always going to want to give up. It's never, it's all, you have to push through it. You have to command the lazy part of you to get up and move and to get after it. And if you don't do that, you won't win the day. You won't carpe diem. You won't seize the moment. And you'll lose the moment. And you'll lose your constancy. You'll lose your courage. And courage is, we've heard it said, courage is choosing to be brave in the midst of fear. It's not a lack of fear. It's not a bravado. It's pushing through all that and choosing it. That's what creates perseverance and resiliency. The test hits you. It hits you hard. It's a real test. But if you choose mentally to have perseverance and to have fortitude and to be resilient, and if you train yourself to be resilient in little ways, then when the big tests come, you're more equipped. You'll get up quicker when you get knocked down. Now, you might get knocked down, but you'll get up quicker, and that's the key: getting up quicker. There was something. What was it? Martin Luther King said something. They can't ride you if your back is straight. If they bend you over, they can ride you, but if you keep your back straight, then you can't be ridden. We need tough backbones. We need tough skin. Those things. And I want to share this book with you. That sometimes I like to call it my burning bush, because in my own story it kind of lit a fire in me. And about a year later, after I read this book, I had what I like to call my personal Mount Sinai. But that's a story for another day. Now this book, it's called The Barbarian Way by Erwin McManus. Now it's been republished as a book called Unleashed, because when it came out, Wild at Heart and all these books for men were out. And it sounds like one of those books, but he didn't necessarily write it just for men. It can be women too, and women can have fortitude. Women actually have more fortitude many times than men. I mean, I've seen my wife have a baby. She got more fortitude and resiliency than I do in some respects, but then there's times she needs to lean on mine, absolutely. We both need it. And we need to instill it in our kids. But I want to read a few things from this. Well, the book starts with telling kind of a story. And I love this story because I love Robert the Bruce. The story is a story that's probably partly legend of James Stewart, who, after Robert the Bruce died, Robert the Bruce always wanted to go on crusade, and he couldn't. And not James Stewart, James Douglas. So James Douglas, he wore around his chest, he wore this little amulet or whatever you want to call it, and it had Robert the Bruce's heart, and it had the heart of the Bruce, the heart of the king, in his mind, in it, and Douglas was on his way to go to the Crusades, and he got stopped, and he was in Spain, where the Reconquista, where the crusade, it was, you could say the western edge of the Crusades was going on in Spain. If you didn't know it, there were 700 years of Muslim occupation in Europe, in Spain. The Europeans didn't actually start the Crusades. Now, we don't have to agree with everything in the Crusades. Even in this book, he tells this story that we know that the Crusades were a tragic lesson in missing the point, maybe, of what Christianity is. But the image of this story. So, Douglas he's in Spain, and he's in this battle with all of these Muslims, and he's surrounded, totally overwhelmed. And he's going to go down either way. But what he does is he takes the heart of the king, the heart of the Bruce, and he takes it and he throws it into the midst of the enemy and those small amount of men with him, and he's like, follow the heart of your king. And they go into the battle and they go out fighting, and it's like, what an image. And then I'm not saying, we need to go and just conquer the Middle East. We don't need to try to repeat the Crusades. I don't think that's the way we spread the gospel, but what is true is that no matter where, we are in a war of the Spirit. We don't fight against flesh and blood. That's maybe where the Crusades got it wrong. But it did give us these stories like this. And even Ecclesiastes says there's a time for peace and a time for war. So, I don't know. God will be the judge in the end. But this image, follow the heart of your king into the battle. And we need some of that. That's what it means to be resilient. Be ready to fight. Even if it's just the fight within that wants to give in to the culture. And the reason it's called Barbarian Way, I'll read this. A tribe called forward, this section is. Although anyone who understands the heart of God knows that the Crusades were a tragic lesson in missing the point, the power of this story awakens within me a primal longing that I am convinced waits to be unleashed within every one who is a follower of Jesus Christ. To belong to God is to belong to his heart. If we have responded to the call of Jesus to leave everything and follow him, then there is a voice within us crying out, fight for the heart of your king. Yet, Christianity over the past 2,000 years has moved from a tribe of renegades to a religion of conformists. Those who choose to follow Jesus become participants in an insurrection. To claim we believe is simply not enough. The call of Jesus is one that demands action. Jesus began his public ministry with a simple invitation, come, follow me. His closing instructions to his disciples can be summarized in one word, go. A quick survey of the modern church would lead you to believe his invitation was come and listen. And his closing mandate would be summarized in the one word, no. The tribe of Jesus, above all, should rightly carry the banner, forward. I know the imagery of the story is nothing less than barbaric, but maybe that's the point. The invitation of Jesus is a revolutionary call to fight for the heart of humanity. We are called to an unconventional war, using only the weapons of faith, hope, and love. Nevertheless, this war is no less dangerous than any war ever fought. And for those of us who embrace the cause of Christ, the cost to participate in the mission of God is nothing less than everything we are and everything we have. That's why we need resiliency, because, hey, folks, we are in a war. And if we don't win the war in our own heart, then we won't be able to win the culture war. We are in a culture war. That is absolutely certain. And we need to be resilient to get through it. Or to attain the prize of the upward call of Christ at the end. Even if it gets us killed. And now that's fortitude, to lose the fear of death. Later he says, it shouldn't surprise us that Paul described baptism as a watered grave. He chose this imagery to describe this sacred passage. Don't you know that all of us who were baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? We were therefore buried with him through baptism into death, in order that, just as Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, we too may live a new life. We're all called to pass through the water grave. Yes, the way into the tribe of God is barbaric. You are joined with the death of Christ, buried with him, and raised to live again. The barbarian has tasted death, has faced death, has conquered death. What do you fear when you have already died and you walked away? Your greatest fears are behind you, and you now go where only those once dead, yet alive, can go. Now, there's certainly parts of this book that I don't totally agree with anymore. Obviously, I've gotten into an organized religion. But in order to find a way that I think God's going to restore everything that is truly Christianity, he's going to bring it all together. And there is a time to conform and to obey authority. And that, again, requires resilience. Again, we see the picture of David. David had horrible authority. Saul was a horrible king. Yet, David was resilient. David did not give in to the temptation to take Saul out. That's an important lesson. He wouldn't touch. If David was going to walk as the anointed and walk in authority, he knew he couldn't violate that authority, that God-given authority. And so, there's so much in that. Sometimes God places evil kings over us, evil rulers, evil governments. But that's the test. God knows what he's doing. He's giving us the opportunity to wake up. Maybe all this swirling and this hardship, it's really not that hard compared to what some of our ancestors went through. But maybe we can choose to be resilient. Maybe we can choose to have the peace of Christ in us and not worry about what's going on. Not worry that, our dollar doesn't go as far. Things like that. I think we can. Life sucks if all you do is complain. It doesn't make anything better. What does complaining do? What does worrying do? What does worrying about it do? It doesn't change a thing. It doesn't change a thing. But we can gain fortitude. We can gain joy. We can gain peace through Christ, especially. We can gain these things that cannot be taken away. They can put us in prison. They can martyr us. But if we've already conquered the fear of death, what can they do? Those are the things I'm after. My grandpa and my dad used to say all the time, and it was kind of about not sweating the small stuff. That's part of it. Something would happen, and they would say, well, in the scope of eternity, does it really matter? No. No, it really doesn't. In 5 seconds, it's not going to matter. It doesn't change who I am, even if someone doesn't like me. Even if someone doesn't agree with me. We get mad at these young people who don't know who they are. They're confused. And what do they need? They don't need us to just bash them. They need us to stand there and love them, even while we don't agree with them. But we all get all hot and bothered because they don't agree with us. What's that old saying? You point your finger at someone, you got 3 more fingers pointing back at you. you can't stand to take it. Now they need us to speak the truth, but they need love, man. They're so broken, they're so hurting. They need us to be able to stand there and not judge them, and have compassion, and have love for them, and they need to see. They need to when they blast us with lies and all these things. We need to stand there and take it for a minute and not react. Be a grown up and don't react. When my toddler freaks out, I'm doing good if I don't react instantly. I don't have an equal and opposite emotional response back. We need to know who we are. We need to know who Christ is. We need to know that it's not about our strength, but we can gain a strength. We can gain hupomone, joyful endurance. And if you gain that, you will win some hearts. Not all, but you'll win some. People will see it, and they will say, hey, I want what that guy has. On both sides of the aisle. People will say, hey, he took it on the chin, he didn't get knocked down. I want what he's got. And the person who's lost as a goose and doesn't know who they are, and they just vomit all this vile lies about themselves, about us, about you, onto you, and you just stand there and take it on the chin, and it just washes right over you, and it don't mean a thing. They see it. And it may not be right away, but down the road, when they hit the hardship of life, they're going to reach out to those that are tough, those that can take it. And if the culture degrades to a really bad point, which is totally possible, it's not guaranteed, but life could get really tough. And if we're tough, if we're mentally tough and spiritually awake, then we'll get through it, you know? Or at least we can teach our kids to get through it, and they can teach their kids. And we need that. And so hopefully that encourages you. You know, maybe that gets a little kick in the pants. Hey, get up and be a grown up and get through the day. It's okay. Life's not only, but it's always a war. Keep fighting. Keep getting up. Learn to get up. Learn to be humble. Learn to have resiliency. Train yourself to be resilient, to not give in to temptation, to react to things, no matter what side you're on. It's okay if you feel lost as a goose. Everybody feels that sometimes. It's okay, you know. And you can understand these kids that don't know if they're boys or girls. There was a point when you were a teenager and you didn't know what the heck was going on. You're confused as hell. Maybe not to that point, right? Because you didn't have an onslaught of culture telling you and giving you ways out that were lies, trying to give you things. Say, hey, they are our kids are under such an onslaught that they're in this point of the most confusing part of their young lives, and the culture is saying, here's the answer. Take this, and it'll make you feel better. And then you got a bunch of parents that are just giving them over to the world and wondering, well, I don't know why they went astray, you know. And it's like, because you're not grown-ups and you're not calling them and speaking to the truth and love to them, and you're reacting and you're getting all mad and upset and you can't believe what's going on. How can you not believe what's going on? Wake up and smell the coffee. Hello. We all need it. No matter if we're 50 or we're 12, we need fortitude and we need to be resilient. Otherwise, you won't make it through life. It don't matter what the prevailing culture is. This age will beat you up if you're not preparing yourself for it, and your kids won't make it if you're not preparing them. Simple fact. So, keep getting up. It's okay. It's okay to admit you're weak and to keep on getting up and to lean on your brothers and sisters in the Lord. It's good. Keep going. If you don't know the Lord and you think I'm a crackpot, I don't care. You need to hear this too, because you're just as lost and confused, and you might be in the pride of thinking you know what you're doing. No one knows fully what they're doing. Everybody's just trying to figure it out. But if you're not in the process of being humble enough to keep trying to figure it out, right? The wise man knows he doesn't have all the wisdom. He realizes how much knowledge and wisdom there is, and he joyfully seeks it out. Hey, you may not like my way, but I'm happy. And most people I meet, they're not. So I'd rather be me. I'd rather be happy and joyful, no matter what's going on. I have learned to be joyful and to find happiness no matter my circumstances. Wow. And that ain't me. That's God. I give all that glory to God. He is my strength. So if this helped you, good. Praise God. Share it with someone else. If you don't like it, pass it on. Whatever. Love all y'all. Hope you have a good day. Adios.